as they can. So thank you so much for being with us this afternoon for this great panel on media makers of color in Massachusetts. We really wanted to make sure at RoxFilm this year that we were really focusing a lot on local, and you'll know that because we did our daily reads that happened every day that focused on Black writers here in Massachusetts, as well as Black actors who were reading their work. And we really just want to make sure that we're supporting the local community. It's in our mission. So when I was in a meeting with a bunch of these folks, I was like, we should be doing this at RoxFilm. We should be having a conversation. So we sort of slid it in at the last minute, and we're really thankful that these folks were able to come on and talk to us. And this is being recorded, so we'll be able to have it in posterity and and you'll be able to hear this conversation. So it is the last day of the festival, which we're really sad about, but I think we've had a really great 6 days. And we continue with a screening tonight, actually one of Nerissa's films that she produced, Come On In, which is our closing night film, and a bunch of other films that follow this Q&A. So let's just get started. I'm really curious. First of all, actually, let's have each of you introduce yourselves, talk about your film companies or your projects or what you're doing currently, and a little bit about each one of those companies. So let's start with you, Chris.
Hi, everyone. My name is Chris Hope. I am the executive director and co-founder of the Loop Lab. We are located in Cambridge, but we impact Greater Boston. And what we do is we are a BIPOC-led nonprofit social enterprise that specializes in providing the arts internships and apprenticeships in digital storytelling. And ultimately, our mission is rooted in empowering young people of color into the media arts industry and to develop careers as audio professionals, video professionals through job training and job placement. Thank you for having me.
Thank you, Chris. Noube?
What's up, guys? My name is Noube Rateau. I'm the president of Noube Productions, and we really focus on doing documentaries and telling people stories. I always say I'm a documentarian by night. I'm a teacher by day. I teach film, and it's really my passion to educate kids in the inner city about film, the potential careers that they could have. We've done documentaries on policing. We're blessed enough to win an Emmy Award on that documentary last year. We've done documentaries on drugs, fatherhood, relationships, all social justice issues. And we're actually currently working on a documentary now that's going to talk about the immigration system. So really blessed to be a part of it. I just want to give Lisa a shout out because, my first festival was the Roxbury Film Festival back in 2011. So almost 9 years ago, back when I'm 31 years old. So I was 22 years old then.
Yep.
So really, really blessed, growing a long way. And one thing the Roxbury Film Festival has done for me, I can speak personally, it's probably done for a lot of people, is that it's given me credibility. And credibility is everything in filmmaking. Credibility to say that you're part of a film festival. Credibility to say that you're an award-winning director. It's so important when you talk about just being able to fundraise and be able to say those things. It's huge. So, I just want to give kudos to you and what you've done to help our Black filmmakers in the community. So I just want to say thank you.
Thank you, Noube. I appreciate that. John?
Yes, I'm John Adekoje. I am a teacher at Boston Arts Academy. I teach film and screenwriting. I am a member of Beyond Measure Productions. We produce so many things. We've done the Halls 1, the Halls 2, Red Monster, a number of narrative and documentary films. There's a MFA production that's happening right now. I think it's showing right now. Yeah, that's it.
Oh, that's
great. And John has also been in our festival.
Yes, I forgot. I should say this is after grad school. This is the first place that I got in, and it was I would never forget it. It's so encouraging, and no matter what if Lisa needs something, boom, I'm there because you show the love first.
That's great to know. I'm going to put that in my back pocket.
It's recorded.
I know, it's recorded.
I know.
Nerissa, how about you?
Hi, everybody. I'm Nerissa Williams-Scott. I am the CEO and lead creative producer at That Child Got Talent Entertainment. Our company specializes in producing films as well as live events. Our motto is production is production is production. You just have to change the paperwork. So we are an edutainment entity where we bring in young filmmakers as well as young social justice driven people who want to learn how to put events and films together, who want to learn the business side of what it is to be in this industry, because you can create all you want and that's wonderful, but until you monetize it, you won't make money at it. And so how do you do that? How do you get through the loopholes, and how do you deal with all of the extra out in the world that comes at you, like taxes and the government and permits and all those wonderful things that you really don't want to deal with? That's what we teach you how to deal with. We specialize in teaching those from 15 to 24. Our workforce is 15 to 24-year-olds, and we love every minute of it. I get a kick out of it.
Great. And Evelyn.
Yes, thank you for having me here. I'm Evelyn Brito. I'm the executive producer of the Bodega Makeover web series. We're on Amazon. It's a web series provides store improvement and healthy eating options. So think of Extreme Home Edition, but no one goes to Disney. There's no Disney trip.
But they could go somewhere. They could go to, like, I don't know.
Nope, straight training.
Somewhere in Massachusetts.
So we did our kickoff, our first makeover in Roxbury. And so the next one is Chelsea, Massachusetts.
Nice.
Excellent. Well, thank you all for being with us today and for sort of sharing your knowledge and some insights on some of the things that we're going to talk about. And one of the things I want to start with is the importance of ownership, right? So we all, Byron Allen, major media mogul, you know, he said that diversity starts with ownership, that it's time for Black people to check the numbers. There are two Americas. Blacks are part of the other America that has been excluded from access. So can we talk a little bit about why you have, you know, created these companies, and, you know, the importance of us owning our own images? And I'm going to start with you, John.
Well, it's very important to own your own images. It's because I liken it to slavery in a different way. If you don't own your own businesses and you don't own your own images and you don't tell your own stories, somebody else is going to tell your stories for you. And unfortunately, they're not going to tell it in the correct way. So this is really about self-identity and self-power empowerment, and having that power and being able to tell those stories in your own community with your own people, and just bringing up younger people to also learn how to tell stories brings a legacy, which is like a very African thing when you're in the village.
Yeah.
Excuse me, when you're in the village, you're telling stories to each other because you want them to remember what's happening so that when you die, they keep telling the stories. And this is what we're doing as story makers here.
Right. I mean, I think that's a very important, when you talk about storytelling, because I think about that all the time, and I think about it in context of this festival and the kinds of stories that we really try to champion. And those are those stories that are not the monolith of what, you know, what is stereotypical of people of color, Black and brown, you know, in the world. And so I feel like for all of you, that's important. So, and you brought up the other point about youth. And so Noube, can you just talk a little bit about, you know, your reaction to that too, about why you decided to create your own production company, why you think it's important that we are supporting youth, and as John said, in a sense, having this pipeline and a legacy to help, you know, help them, you know, understand the importance of owning their own images.
Well, I think the best, what they always tell my students, the best investment is yourself. You're not going to let yourself down. You're not going to rip yourself off. You're always going to pay yourself. So, you know, start with yourself and being able to invest in yourself in your own business. And number two, I think, you know, in terms of why, you know, we don't own so much things, particularly when it comes to really a lot of things, but let's just focus on filmmaking, is that we don't see success. And you only, you know, if you don't see something, then it's very hard to believe it. So I really think it's important that we really change the narrative that, you know, filmmaking, that it's a business for you know, typically old white men. That's really for everybody. I think that's changing now. And I think we're really turning the corner. But I think what we got to do as a community, particularly the minority community, is that we need to tell people that filmmaking is not just a hobby. You can pay a mortgage, you can pay bills, you can pay a car note with filmmaking. I think a lot of times we kind of water down what filmmaking is, and I think it's culturally too. I think within the Black community, and I just speak about just my personal experiences. My parents, not that they weren't supportive, because they were, but they just didn't see filmmaking as a realistic opportunity to make money, because they didn't see it.
Mm-hmm.
They just didn't see it, and they saw other things, but they didn't see that, so it wasn't a reality. So I think what we got to do is our generation is making sure, like, listen, filmmaking is a reality. You got to bust your behind. You got to work hard. You got to be extremely consistent. You got to do all that. But if you do that, you can legitimately make a career out of it. And I think we got to change the narrative that filmmaking is not a hobby; it could be a career.
I think that's really important, and I think that it's not just for the youth, but it's for anyone out there, right? Like when you tell people that you're in this business and you make movies, they're like, "Oh, isn't that nice? Like, what's your day job?" I mean, like, like, what else do you do? Because you can't possibly be making a living from that, and
Right.
And so that's like a perfect segue into you, Chris, because you.
And Lisa, can I add one more thing about that? Is I teach film, and before this, I was the communications director over at the mayor's office in Brockton. That's all been because of my documentary filmmaking work. So was I making thousands of dollars through my documentary? No, but it's given me the opportunity to create a whole nother full-time job within the film industry, which I think people need to realize is that, listen, me doing my documentaries, did I get a big fat $100,000 check? No, but it's giving me opportunities within the career to do other things within film. So in essence, yes, my documentary has paid for my career. It has paid for different things.
Right. No, exactly. And I think we'll talk a little bit more about that. So Chris, you are really focusing on economic empowerment, and as Noube talks about that this actually can be, this is a job, this is a career, and how do you make a living at that? And your curriculum, I mean, you're like deep into this. So why did you come to this? Like, why did you decide to create the Loop Lab the way you created it, to have this idea of economic empowerment for people going into this business?
I think oftentimes when we think of programs, we, at least in my opinion, visualize folks parachuting their own notions of what the solution to a community problems are. And this program, I have to give a huge credit to our demographic, the 18 to 30-year-olds who have gone through our program, because I started this whole move with them in mind, and at the same time not making any presuppositions of what this program would look like. I mean, me and Moses Michelle, the other co-founder of the Loop Lab, we went door to door in different neighborhoods in Cambridge and greater Cambridge, talking with folks, going to the basketball court when people were playing basketball, and doing other things, just asking people if they had a blank check, what kind of skills would they want to learn? What kind of opportunities did they see viable in their lives and in their communities? And the two things that came up consistently, Lisa, was economic opportunities and also creative outlets. People wanted more creative outlets for themselves. And so from getting that information, then, it was really about, how does this apply for workforce development? How can we be innovative here? And from that, we're saying things like they wanted to learn how to manage their checking account, how to manage their budget. People were saying things like they wanted to know how to start their own business, right? And like how to apply for an LLC, which is why our organization is really geared in not just traditional workforce development, but this other piece, which speaks, I think, to filmmakers, which is, what is it like to work as a consultant? What is it like to work as a W-9 worker? Those are things that even in, great schools that are, in filmmaking, even in here in the Northeast, they don't even teach that. And so a huge part of our curriculum is the self-efficacy that's required, to be able to make a presentation, to make a proposal, to make a bid, to be able to work with clients, at the same time invoice clients. Understanding all of those aspects is really geared towards where our programming covers. And I think that's rooted in this idea of, again, empowerment rather than parachuting solutions, parachuting the notion of economic opportunity. If you can teach people how to fish, they're going to fish for themselves, they're going to fish for their families. And that's ideally what we want in Black communities, brown communities, all of our communities that are struggling on the margins in society, not just in film. And so for me and also our team, it really became paramount that we make this concept of empowerment at the very root of our ideologies, but also our practice, right? Where our practice is informed by equity, but also empowerment. And ultimately that is scaffolding the necessary foundational information and resources that make it possible for one to achieve professional and personal success.
Yeah, I think that's so important. I mean, you bring up so many, important points around how, how the industry can work and how the industry can support people. But I mean, I remember years and years and years ago, we were trying to get youth to understand, and other people too, to understand that, a career behind the scenes in theater is actually a career, right? Because you're learning a skill, and that skill can take you to all sorts of different places. And I think that, right, that's and learning that sort of skill, whether it's being, an electrician or whether you're, a set decorator, whatever it is, those skills can transfer to so many other things, and vice versa, right? So,
Right.
And so I think the whole idea behind the economic empowerment, that film offers that opportunity, that media offers that opportunity, because it teaches you things, whether you're in front of the camera or behind the camera. And Nerissa, you're doing somewhat similar things as Chris is doing. And I don't know, Chris, if someone had asked a question about whether or not it's just you're just focusing on youth. I know Nerissa is, but that there are other people that are above 30 who might have an interest in transferring skills in being in this profession.
Absolutely. Sorry, with me or Chris?
Yep, Nerissa. Nope.
Oh, me. Okay. I focused on youth this summer. I focused on youth from March until now. I put all my energy into the youth because of COVID. A lot of undergraduates came to me and said, Nerissa, I need something to do. And I'm like, I'm sorry, honey, everything's canceled. Everything, and so my thing is, my mother taught me, if you don't have a job to go to, make up a job. So I had them to create something so that they could potentially, not that they made a lot of money at it, but it's something that they could start to build so that they could make some money at it in a different way. And so my focus this year was youth, but I don't cast out my elders, and I don't cast out my equals. I don't, I love, as a matter of fact, it's a little bit more fun talking to those who are over 45, because they're in a new space. They're in a new mindset. They're trying to figure out their new change in life. They're like, it's time to retire. What am I going to do? Oh, I'm going to make a movie. I have a woman who just came to me, and she's 62. And she wrote a script for the first time. And I was like, get it, girl. And we sat and we talked about the script, and she really wants to produce it. And we talked about, what does that mean? And I sat down and I consulted with her, because she knew she wanted to do it, but she just didn't know how. And
Right.
She didn't have any resources to go and find, because she didn't want to go back to school.
Right.
The idea of going back to college at 62 was not something she was looking forward to. So
or something that she didn't need to do.
Exactly. It's just, it's not necessary. By the time you get to be 62 years old, you have a lot of skills under your belt that you can transfer into this industry. There
Right.
are things that you don't have to go relearn. You just have to understand how to change your perspective. So I'm an educator by heart. I'm actually from a family of educators. And so I am the black sheep of my family, because everybody was like, what's wrong with you? What do you mean you don't want to teach? And so I literally fought it from the day I can remember, because I've been in this industry since 4, because fortunately God blessed me with a mother who was like, yeah, no, this is not her. She's different. And so I've been in this industry since 4, from being an actress to learning how to put clothes together, how to be a lighting designer. I'm an IATSE master electrician for theater. I know how to be a stage manager. Like I am immersed in this industry. And so that for me, as you were saying earlier about how you transition and go to these different levels, just because you're an actor doesn't mean you can't be a director.
Right. No, I mean,
right.
Absolutely. And I think that's an important part of it. And Andrea, who had put something in the chat about that, you have to be willing to sort of like do it all and work hard at doing that, because you're realizing your dream. And, Evelyn, I want you to talk a little bit about that. I know you have a hard out at a time that you're going to have to go, but so we want to hear from you and about Bodega Makeover, and just what Nerissa is saying is like understanding that, that it's not necessarily for the faint of heart, but it is a profession that is rewarding and that you can be creative, but you do have to be all things.
Yeah, you have to wear many hats. And I wish I had Chris' program when I started, but I had to go to the hard knock school and learn things on my own. I mean, I think just like, when you're talking about earlier about owning your story, I think it's super important, especially what I'm trying to do with the Bodega Makeover is tell the story of, food desert community and bringing sort of healthy foods, right? And then you see here, you have the other aspect to it where I'm bringing a Afro-Latino host, where, it's a struggle with the Latino media, period. Just having somebody who's brown in as a lead is difficult. And, we have a long way to go, especially in the Latino media. So I think owning your story is important. Trademark. I think when I started the Bodega Makeover, I was like, I got to trademark this logo. Create an LLC. You do this, but I didn't have that all at once. I had to like figure it out on myself, or I had to call my friend, who was an executive producer in Hollywood. I was like, what's the next step? Oh yeah, I'll call you on Monday. Like, okay, I need to know now. So just learning as I go, and also being an events manager, I was able to transfer some of those skills as an executive producer. I was like, oh, okay, this is how you do it. It's sort of like events, but with money.
Right. I mean, I think that's real. I think it's really important, and I want to talk a little bit about, sort of how what project, first, not what projects you guys are working on, but really how do you come about your projects? Because I think it's really interesting that you say, showing up on the set, or let's say you get a commercial contract, and people aren't used to an all black or brown crew. Like, how do you? It's really important how you're teaching people, and new people to show up on a set, to be on a set, to learn those things that you don't necessarily know going in, which I think what happens is that it puts us at a disadvantage, right? If we don't have a program like Chris's program or Nerissa's program, like you said, Evelyn, you're learning from scratch. So how do we make sure, and I feel like all of you are doing it, you're working with, non-film people at sometimes, youth coming up, like how do we make sure that we are providing the opportunity for these students and anyone else who's entering this, that they're comfortable going on a set, that they're comfortable walking on, and if someone asks them a question, they don't get kicked off the next day. I think that's really important for Black and brown people as we're pushing them into an industry that's predominantly white.
That's absolutely right. And I know for us at the Loop Lab, the best way to do that is hands-on work. So we have these young adults, they're working on film sets, they're working at shoots, and they're getting that first-hand experience of what it's like. Our most recent film shoot was for the Isabella Stewart Gardner Museum, and we did a film project called Dear Mr. McKellar. And in the midst of that, here we had a few of our students and alum, and they're working with some of the top artists in the city to really tell this amazing high art story. But, some of those things before they even make it to the shoot, we go over all of that in the curriculum, to set them up for success. I think on the other side of that coin too, which is also just as critical, if not even more, is we're very deliberate and intentional about the companies that we work with, and making sure that they understand our mission not necessarily just about getting a video content from us. So we run a production studio in addition to the training, where on one hand it gives our alumni and students more experience on the ground, building out their portfolio even more, but it also generates revenue for our organization. But it really becomes important for our partners to understand that if you really want just a very quick turnover for a video, and that's all you want is the video, then you probably are better served working with like a for-hire, smaller company. But if you're really looking for a relationship to create an opportunity for some amazing talent, and they just happen to be a person of color, a Black person, a brown person, then this is the way to go about it. This is how you do it. And to go to some of these shoots where people have told us, this is the most people of color or Black people in the space that they've ever seen in production. It's really remarkable. It's really just remarkable, from the MFA to Isabella Gardner.
Exactly.
All of these
and that's empowerment in and of itself. And I just want to touch on something for Evelyn before I know she has to run, but and then I want to ask all of you this as well, is is showing up, right? So you're showing up as a Black or brown person, and you're sort of the challenges of that, being hired as a company that's predominantly of color, and then showing up to a meeting as a predominantly person of color that people might not know, and how that has maybe been a challenge, and then how we can sort of I feel like we're creating that legacy. And now, I loved seeing all you guys when I went to the meeting with Lisa Stroud in the film office, and I was like, oh my God, there's so many.
Shout out to Lisa Stroud.
Shout out.
Lisa.
So Evelyn, can you just quickly talk, and then I want to have this conversation with everyone just about the sort of the challenges that you face as a person of color in this industry, in Massachusetts, as you're trying to get work and support people that want to go into this industry.
I mean, it's the challenge is being heard and seen, right? So, just, I guess, navigating that, it's definitely a challenge. But finding your village, I think that's important. Finding your village that really believes in your voice, and gives you an opportunity. I think that's the start. We don't turn anybody down. When we were filming Bodega Makeover, we have a few youth that came and asked what we were doing. And we stopped, and explained what we were doing. So, we welcome. Chris, if you have anyone who wants to come on the set, please.
Absolutely, we'll talk offline.
Yeah, absolutely. So, I think that's how it starts. It's just create your own village, and support each other.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's important. John, what about you? Because your production companies have done MFA work. You've done, I think you just did something for ACLU. I think,
Yes.
It's sort of what are those challenges facing you as you, take on a project as a predominantly Black or brown company?
It's a great question. It really starts in the classroom, because when I'm teaching, I try to create the highest standards possible. So whatever I'm teaching, you're going to expect it on set. But the question of having a business meeting, and maybe they thought the last name meant something else, I don't know.
Right. I mean, I'm just asking because it's real.
It happens, and then all of a sudden, you can see some doubt, but after a conversation, they realize that this person knows a lot more than they do. So they have to be comfortable with that coming into those things. It also affects my students, because I always bring my students to the set. And so sometimes they have questions about, oh, does this kid know how to light this scene? Can I trust that they will light me properly? And sometimes I let that sit. I just let them work. And in the end, when they see it on the screen, on the monitor, they're like, oh, wow, this is a very talented person. But there's always that doubt that is there. And I just have to fight through it and just keep them confident and just let us go, let's just make stuff. And they will find out that we know more about it there, because we have done the research. We know the businesses in the community. We know what kind of work they've done before, and we know that we can do better work than that. So you just have to wait and just believe that we're going to do something that's exciting.
Right. And Noube, what about you? And and I know it can be tiring as we as
Yeah,
our
absolutely. I mean, you know, it's one of the first things you do when you walk into a room, unfortunately, to see if you're the only Black person. I'm not sure if I'm the only one that does that. So, you know, the reality is, you know, when it comes to walking in any type of situation, especially if you're a youth, you have to be confident. And one thing I always teach my kids before anything, before we even touch equipment, I got to make sure this is right and this confidence is right. Because if that's right, it's a lot easier to do your work. Now, listen, the reality is when you walk into different production rooms, it's not going to be as diverse as you want it to be. But if you're confident that you put in the work beforehand, before the game, when the game starts, you know, you're just as talented as everyone else. So I truly believe, you know, just getting your mental right, that you have the confidence to do it. By having the confidence, constant repetition, constant practice, constant putting you in positions, you know, to succeed. It's just that constant, you know, consistency is everything. I keep telling everyone at the end of the day, you know, one thing about this film world is that you don't have to be the best. You just have to be the most consistent, you know, and people are just going to quit because they're lazy. That's just the reality of it. But if you're consistent, you will find a job. You will find a career, because people are just, you know what? Let's just give the job to Chris. He's always there. He's there all the time. He just give it to him because he's always there. He's just so consistent, as opposed to the person who may be a little full of themselves and not willing to work hard. So just be consistent and make sure this is right.
Yeah, I think that's really important. Nerissa, did you want to add anything to that?
Sorry, I was muted. I would say that be open. Don't close yourself off thinking that you have to stay in one lane or the other. If you are a person that believes in doing documentary work, that's awesome. But you should also be open to doing experimental and doing narrative work, because it's quite possibly that you get into a story and as a documentarian, and that person says, you know what, I want to make a narrative film. And you're like, okay, you want to tell your story. Well, if you don't practice how to make a narrative, then you're not going to really understand it. So I'm a big proponent of practicing and continuing to be on as multiple different things as possible so that you can learn all of these different avenues. Now, I'm not opposed to telling people that they should walk in their purpose. And if that's what they want to do, that's what they want to do. And I'm all about it. But I know, just being a Black woman in this industry, I have had to learn so many different things just to be able to get my foot in the door. Not because there wasn't somebody in there looking at me waving saying, come on in.
Right.
Pun intended.
Pun intended.
However, at the same time, I was that person who, you know, I tell people all the time, I'm the bottom of the totem pole. And they're like, no, Nerissa, you're not. And I'm like, are you kidding me? Are you kidding me? I'm at the bottom, and that's all right, because I can claw my way up. I'm not worried about that. I have grit. I can make it happen, and I have thick skin. So let's go. And so it's all about, and this is why I started the company, quite honestly, because I had too many of women of color, young women of color, who were getting overlooked. They weren't getting any of the jobs. They were really great. They had great work ethic, but they were just being overlooked simply because they were Black and brown.
Right. And that was going to be my next question, really, is about, like, why did you start your companies? I mean, it's why, you know, RoxFilm started. It's why Color Film started, really, because people weren't getting into other festivals, and it was because people weren't creating content that was stereotypical of what film festivals 22 years ago were looking for in Black content. And it was like, we are not a monolith. We have all these other stories to tell. So, you know, I feel like all of you all have done that as well. Like, so what was the inciting thing that said, I'm going to start a company? Because it's not easy to start a company, and it's not easy to sustain that company. You know, like you said, like Chris, like you talked about, it's, you know, becoming an LLC and becoming this and becoming, like, there are all sorts of things that need to happen for you to become a business. So if you can just talk a little bit, and Chris, I'll start with you, about, you know, what incited you to start your company, and then, you know, sort of some of the challenges of doing that, of becoming a business and becoming a film and media business.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think for the Loop Lab, it's a little different in that, you know, our number one agenda was not making money. It was really more so identifying a need. And based on that need, doing research to find out, okay, what is happening here? And what we found was a couple of things. One, that there is a desire among our communities, Black and brown communities in Greater Boston, to get into this industry. However, many communities suffer from really just a model of exceptionalism. So when you go into certain communities, mostly like low income, you'll find that a lot of the young adults want to be the rappers. They want to be Little Uzi Vert. They want, you know, that's their foray or entry door into the media industry, right? It's to be the artist. But that's really because in life, like everyone, it's representation. You look for, in your circumvent environment, who talks like you, who's from a neighborhood like, you know, like yours, who's successful. And oftentimes it tends to be the rappers. And so a big part of our role has been really breaking down folks' myopic viewpoint of what they think is possible within the media arts industry, right?
Right.
From sound design, sound editor, being a sound editor, all the way to video editing, cinematography, so many opportunities. I mean, we had a young sister who makes production beats at night, but by day, she's a full-time employee for a video game company, and she makes all of the sound design for a lot of video games. So these opportunities to meet folks and to get that mentorship opens their perspective of what's possible. And getting back to the question, really a big part of seeing the need, but then seeing also much of the different economy, or the film economy, also the AV economy, saying we're looking for this talent. Like, you know, you go to these meetings and they're saying, well, we don't have a pipeline for Black and brown folks. And you know, where do we find them? Or let's, you know, like Netflix, let's create a director of, you know, a director of diversity. And, you know, and then they put all of that on the one shoulders of one poor sister who now has to be the black face of the organization. But the reality of that is there are, unfortunately, there aren't as many pipelines for our folks as there should be and could be. And so I think being able to identify the need, and then identifying what is it that you're trying to do that is different than the rest, different than other folks that are doing something similar. I know for us, the fact that we're teaching entrepreneurship as a critical outcome, it not only speaks to the fact of being a media professional, in real time, but it also is innovative in the sense that in traditional workforce development, it's unthought of to teach people how to be in a gig economy. That's not something that happens. But let's be honest, a large number of folks, millions and millions of people, are part of the gig economy.
Well, yeah, especially now, right?
Especially now.
And we need to enter that gig economy, and we need to be ready to enter that gig economy. And John, you're sitting here shaking your head back, and you know, it's because it's the same thing. And you started your own company and then Beyond Measure because you wanted to get more work, because you wanted to support, because people weren't, you know, hiring other, you know, you to be on set. So what was the reason for those two companies?
For the two companies, it started with service. So we realized there's a need in our community. We have businesses. They need to be promoted properly, not just taking their money and doing a very poor job. Stories need to be told. And so we just took that very seriously. We told that we want to serve our community, but we want to give them the best product possible. And that was always the perspective. It's like, you give us, we get the job, we're going to do 200%. We're not going to just do 100%, because it's our community and we want you to succeed. Whatever, if we're making a commercial, we're going to go all the way out. And I like what Nerissa said earlier about not staying in one lane, because normally I just focus on narrative filmmaking, documentaries, but nowadays I'm shooting a lot more commercials. So you're taking that money and you're experimenting with the new equipment that they have, and you're exposing younger people to those new things as well. So they're able to also serve their community and give them the best product possible.
Yeah, I mean, I think that you know, when you think about what you all are doing and how you set up these companies and how you really have, you know, service in mind and supporting youth, I think that that's wonderful, and I think it's really important. But one of the things I think about is, you know, as Black people, we're constantly creating space to help other people, which is great. But then, you know, we're not necessarily getting the capital that we need, right? We're we're constantly in sort of like this nonprofit kind of phase and doing that. And I'm going to shoot it to you, Nerissa, because I just want to talk a little bit about how you guys sustain yourself. What's the how do you sustain yourself as a company? How do you get work? And whether that's John saying a lot more commercial work, which we know brings in money, whether you're constantly having to go after grants, if you're constantly fundraising, like how do you make sure that you are here in this space for a long time to be able to be like maybe a Tim Reed who has his own production company. I'm not going to talk Byron Allen or Tyler Perry. I mean, we're talking about like, the reality of being able to be in this space. So can you talk a little bit about that?
I say, why not bring up Tyler Perry? I mean, I remember when Tyler was living in his car in Oklahoma City.
Right.
And,
I guess doing the plays, doing the Chitlin circuit.
And he stuck with that particular outreach, and in order to pay for himself to have some place to eat and sleep, he struggled for about 2 years, and then someone came along and said, hey, you have a good idea, let's start small and work our way up, and now here he is. So I think that for me personally, I've done the same thing. Like I was in LA for 8 years before I came back to Boston, and I came back to Boston because I was like, let me get my degree so I can teach. And I, because at the end of the day, you get old, and pulling them 16, 18 hour days, that's a lot, and I can't necessarily say at 50 years old, I'm going to be pulling 16-hour days. Like, that's just not going to be me. So I had to figure out, how am I going to retire in this industry while still doing something that I love to do? And over the course of years, even though I swore I wasn't going to be a teacher, here I am, because who knew you could teach this industry? I didn't know that. I didn't know that growing up. I didn't even know that there was a such thing called a film major. Like, what is that? And then I realized it when I got to college, but after that, it was just a whole nother ball of wax. And I went from, I sit in my space and I'm like, okay, we got to make sure we make payroll, because I pay everybody. Yep. Like, I don't believe in asking you to work for free.
Nope.
I don't like that at all. Too many people have asked me to work for free, and I've worked for free, and I still didn't get anything out of it. So if I can give you something out of it and give you a paycheck, then that's what I'm trying to do. And if I can't pay your worth, I'm going to tell you up front, this is all I can do. And if you agree to it, then let's do it. But I have to sit as a businesswoman. I have to sit in my space and say, okay, now I got to crack this nut and this nut and this nut in the next 3 weeks. Where's that money going to come from? It's either going to come from going out there and shaking the weeds and getting some clients. It's come from writing grants and being on the upper side of that, because grant writing is not easy. And then we are a for-profit industry entity. So we have to align ourselves with a nonprofit entity to be able to receive those grants, because that's through a 501c3, and nobody's donating any money to a for-profit entity. Not really. If they donating it, it's called a loan. It's not called a donation. So that means I got to pay that money back. So it's grants with a nonprofit, aligning myself with organizations that believe in what I believe in, so that we can make sure we believe in it together. It's going out and wrestling up clients, and that's called networking. You got to get out there. You got to meet people. You got to talk to people. You got to try to figure out who is on the same mindset as you, so that you all can work and well together. And then it's always about your community, and how do you get out there and help your community? I'm a firm believer in giving back to my community, because when I give back to my community, they give back to me.
Right.
There are people in my community who call me and say, hey, Nerissa, I know somebody that needs somebody to do something. Do you know? And I'm like, yeah, or I don't, but let me find out for you. So that's what we do.
Right. Yeah. And I think that, you touched on a number of things there, and Noube, I want you to respond to that as well around, networking. And Chris actually said that as well. I mean, and this is a networking industry. I mean, you have to, in order to survive, is really, putting yourself in those places and spaces and being able to do that. And Noube, your production company's been around for quite a bit, for quite a while, and successful in getting, contracts and working, and also making films. And so how do you make that work for you?
Well, the biggest thing is just being able to just be consistent. And I'm just going to go back to that all the time, being consistent, because consistency breeds, people are willing to invest in you. If they see you do work for a year, then quit for a couple of years and come back, they're not really going to invest in that type of money. So I've been successful in doing private fundraisers just through the community.
Mhm.
It's just the mere fact, okay, I've seen the work that New Productions does. I've seen the quality of work. Now I'm going to invest. Initially, yes, I had to invest in my co-director. We had to invest in ourselves, and we are our first investment. Now I'm really blessed to say our last 3 documentaries that we've done, they've all made a profit. We haven't spent a dime from our pockets. It's just been through grants, private donations, and so on and so forth. And that took time, though. I mean, our first documentary, we weren't losing money. This was back in 2015. So it took me. I started doing documentary work in when I was 21. So it took about 5 years. Long story short, 5 years of just consistent grind all the time, building reputation. It's tough because minorities, we don't have, a rich dad or a super rich family member to help that first initial investment. That's just
Right.
that's not our reality. So what I'm always telling my students is, listen, my saying is, everybody want to go to heaven, nobody want to die. Okay. Everybody want to eat, nobody want to cook. But you got to first make that first initial investment and be consistent in yourself. And once you do that and you go to film festivals and start winning awards, use that. I'm an award-winning director. Flip that and use that as award-winning director, Noube Rateau is now applying for this grant, and be able to market yourself the best way.
Right.
And that's how I've been able to do it.
Yeah. I mean, I think,
And I'm not there yet, and still a lot of work. It's a consistent grind, consistent hustle.
and that's the whole thing, right? And I don't know if anyone wants to respond, but Chris, when you're teaching, and all of you when you're teaching, I'm hearing that these are the things that you are imparting on your students and people that you work with. That this is, it can be a job, it can be a future, and it can be a career, but it's about the grind. It's about making sure that you're crossing your T's and dotting your I's, and making sure that you're in the right spaces and in the right rooms. And making sure that you're ready.
Right. And one thing I do want to mention, I'm not sure who said, I think it was you, Nerissa, that said about being able to kind of do everything. Just making yourself valuable. If you know how to edit, film, and be in front of the camera and write, if someone fires you, they're firing like 4 people. So, I mean, you really make yourself extremely valuable when you do that. I think that's a great point, is being able to really have access to really have a good knowledge of everything.
Yeah, I mean, it's so true, right? Is that it's like, make yourself useful. And if there's something that needs to be done, you're the first one to say, I'll do it. And if you don't know, you're going to figure out how it's done. I mean, I think that that's really important, and that's what this industry is all about. So we have about maybe a couple more minutes, and I'm wondering how maybe we can talk a little bit about projects that you're working on now and how people can connect with you. I mean, you're doing commercial work, you're doing film work, you're doing all sorts of documentary work, you're training the youth. So I would love for each of you just to talk a little bit about maybe projects you're working on now and how people can work with you, connect with you, so that we can sort of get something like going on that people, and you've already put your stuff in the chat, so that's great. And I'm going to send it out to people, and it'll be on our website, on our YouTube channel, but let's go out with that. So let's start with John.
Okay, yeah, I just want to add something to this. There are different levels to it. So when you get to the next level where you want to make a feature film that costs a lot more money and you're looking for investors, you find that there's another different kind of struggle. So
Right.
We're in a place where we've invested in ourselves and we have a business that kind of sustains itself and it's at a certain level. And now you're thinking about, now I want to make a sci-fi film. I want to make something bigger. You'll get into a place again where there's another struggle. Mm-hmm. It's like, I'm having a hard time finding investors, even though I have the award-winning blah, 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 blah.
Right.
How do you get to that next level? I don't have the answer. I'm just bringing that to the table to say that is another place where things need to improve, how we connect with each other, how we make even bigger things as we keep growing as artists.
Absolutely. I agree. I want to say that I think one of the main reasons why I started doing for me personally, not my company. And that's the other thing. I am not my entity. My entity is That Child Got Talent Entertainment, but I am Nerissa. Nerissa is where I love my company, and my company loves me too. But at the end of the day, we are still separate, and yet equal. And so my thing is, Nerissa loves doing narrative work. Like, my passion is making, you know, fantasy stories. I want to do sci-fi films. I want to do virtual reality. I want to do augmented reality. These are things that my artist in me wants to let out. And so what does that mean? That means that sometimes I use the entity TCGT in order to help funnel some of the things that I want to do passionately. But how does that work? I got to stay within legal guidelines. I've got to make sure that my company is doing certain things. So you got to know the rules. Got to know the rules to play the game. And that is something that I have from the School of Hard Knocks. I literally had to knock my head up against a few walls a certain amount of times in order for me to be able to learn. And I think that's why I am so passionate about teaching people who want to know, because I don't need to keep it to myself. I'll give the knowledge away. You know, and I think that that's what the people who are on this panel, I think that's what we're here to do today, is that we're not closed to giving away that knowledge. We want you to have it, because if I've learned from my mistakes, why shouldn't I give it to you? You should, because trust me, no matter how much information I give you and how much I teach you, you still gonna make your own mistakes.
Right.
So
no, exactly. So we come back to sort of like, how can people connect with you? Because I do think, you know, and it's not, people are going to want to say to John, like, what are you working on, or how can I be a part of your next production, or for Chris, like, I have like hundreds of youth that are really interested in doing this. So let's just sort of end with that, about what you're doing, how people can get in touch with you, whether they're actors, whether they're producers, whether they're, you know, all of that sort of stuff. And yeah, make sure you put your companies in the chat, and we'll let people know that. So Noube.
So how can people best get in contact with me is just go through my website, my first name, Noube, Noube productions.com. I'm currently working on a immigration documentary. It's called IMU, Immigration America. We're probably going to get it done, God willing, 2022. The pandemic kind of set us back about a good 6 to 8 months in terms of traveling, but God willing, 2022 early. If you know, we're always looking for production assistants. I'm actually looking for someone who knows how to do animation and want to hire someone for that. So if you know anyone for After Effects, Effects and animation, we really need help with that. So just contact me through my website, newbieproductions.com. I put in the chat, and I'm a teacher, man. I love working with kids. This is my passion. I could win all these awards and really be blessed. It means nothing, and I mean that from the bottom of my heart. It means nothing if I'm not giving it back and giving that knowledge to people. I'm also in the process of working on a workshop. I did my first one this year, Newbie Productions Media Workshop. We had 150 people there. We had about 10 public access stations who are willing to give out internships and or jobs. So I'm working on my second annual one, date to be determined for next year, depending on the pandemic. But that the best way to contact me is my website.
Excellent. Nerissa?
I put in the chat my website and the email for you to get somebody to reach back out to you. If you send me an email through the website, it may or may not show up. That's all I have to say. But if you use the email address that's in the chat, you'll definitely get a ping back. And as far as what I'm working on, oh my God, I'm working on 2 documentaries. I'm working on 1 narrative. I'm working as a teacher. I work at 2 different colleges right now. I'm trying to pick up clients here and there. I mean, I'm on my grind. I never stop. I live, sleep, eat, breathe, all of this. I love this industry. And this is something that I've been working at for a long time. So we do live events. BAMS Fest was our largest event this year that we had to cancel because of COVID. But we're coming back at you come next year. It's going to shout outs to Catherine and Reggie. It's going to be amazing next year. We're changing up the model. and just new and innovative things. I'm all about new and innovative things. I'm working with an organization doing an AR project where we're going to send people around the city of Boston so you can learn about all the Black people you did not know about.
Great.
You're going to have an augmented reality experience while you do it.
Wow. John, what about you?
So yes, so beyondmeasuresproductions.com is the website. All the information is there. I am working on a short film that is going to have 2 people from the sitcom Bob and Abisola. We were about to shoot this month, but you know, COVID is kind of tripping.
Yeah.
Over this tripping. I like that.
Creators, you know, you guys all know how to do this. Now
personify the pandemic. I love it.
I need to get that on the shirt.
I know, right?
COVID is kind of tripping.
I like that. Wait, John said it here, so he's going to do those shirts and he's going to copyright it or trademark it, whatever you do.
Yeah. And then, of course, I read last week for one of the daily reads. It's a very big sci-fi film. I am going to pursue it. I know it costs a lot of money, but I don't care. I want to make this into a TV series or a feature, and it'll just keep pressing to make that happen.
Excellent. And you know, we're all here to help support that. But yeah, John did that reading, and people were like, that is an incredible script. How much do you think that's going to cost? Like $500,000?
Exactly.
Let's raise the money. Like, let's figure it out. And Chris, why don't you take us out? So just a little bit of, you know, like what you're working on, and yeah.
Yeah. So I would say the first couple of things on our production studio side of what we do is we are doing ongoing video documentation for some specific grants that are in Greater Boston. The first grant being the Live Arts Boston grants from the Boston Foundation. And so we are the primary video documentation provider for that. And we're talking about over 50 some odd live art performances in Greater Boston, mostly people of color performing. So it's great to provide people of color behind the camera, behind the soundboard, to actually also capture what's happening with these artists. In addition to that, we're working with the Radical Reimagination Project, or that grant, which is through the Surdna Foundation. And in addition to that, we're working on some broadcasting from Oberon Theater, the BCA. You know, as you can imagine with COVID, broadcast skills and live streaming skills become more and more invaluable to institutions and organizations that just can't meet in person. And so our production studio, even though we operate as a nonprofit, we're able to teach our young adults and our alumni to do that work. And also that's invaluable skills, future-proofing skills that they'll have as those opportunities become more and more indispensable and invaluable as time goes on with the pandemic. We just recently released a film in conjunction with the Isabella Stewart Gardner Museum. We were essentially hired by the museum to produce a film about Mr. McKellar, who, again, I put the link in the chat. And so that's an amazing opportunity for you to kind of get a chance to see the work of our alumni and to see what the level of creativity that they're operating on. And as far as our training, we just graduated our recent cohort, 2020 cohort, which has been amazing to kind of see them evolve. And we're going to be looking for young adults ages 18 to 26 next month. And so we're starting another media arts internship cohort next year in January. So if you're watching this or you know a young adult in Greater Boston, 18 to 26 that might be interested, please have them reach out to me. I put all of my information in the chat, my email, and also the website, thelooplab.org. And in addition to that, I'll just leave at this. We have just become an official sponsor for audio video careers through the Commonwealth of Massachusetts.
Wow.
And so that means that we are able to provide an official apprenticeship opportunity for those looking to enter the audio video industry. And so that means you get the certificate from the state. You also get the certification from a labor organization called the VIXA, which is one of the preeminent labor organizations overseeing the audio video industry itself. And so it's an amazing.
Is that apprenticeship paid?
Yeah, it's a full-time apprenticeship paid. We're right now sharing up some partners for that internship. We have apprenticeship partners. And so also, if you are familiar with any studios, companies, production companies, firms that are interested in actually in 2021 taking our apprentices, let's have a conversation offline.
That's what it's all about, right? That's what it's all about. Everything that you guys are doing is what it's all about. It's just, you've imparted us with so much great information for filmmakers, for anyone who wants to enter this business. Someone said, I'm 61, I want to enter this business. What do I need to do? As a writer, follow your dream, figure out the people like this, like here on this panel that are making things happen, that have the skills and network with people. I think that's key. And I'm just so excited, having sort of started, color film 22 years ago. My gosh, I can't believe, with a little idea to bring people together, Black and brown people together, to network, to have them make movies together, because we wanted to create and sustain our own storytelling. To see you all here today, having your companies and them being successful is really, so incredible for me to see. And so we are.
Can I say one thing just real quickly? So I'm sorry to cut you off. I just want to say one thing.
Okay.
Come out tonight and watch Come On In. It's the closing film of the festival. Get it?
Yes, yes.
Now, how do you know that I wasn't going to say that?
It's okay. You probably were. You probably were, but I had to shameless plug. Daniel Callahan in the building. I had to shameless plug.
You do, because you're a producer, and that's what you do.
That's right.
Look, she totally messed my whole, anyway. So I just love it. I love you all. I'm very happy that we got to do this. I'm happy that I got to connect with all of you again through the film office, and Lisa Stroud, who brought you all together and brought me into the room. I want to make sure that we're here as RoxFilm to support the works and the efforts that you're doing here, and supporting you. So if there's anything we can do, we want to be here for you. It was just, this is incredible, and we will continue these conversations. I think they're good, and people would get an opportunity to for us to do this on a regular basis. Maybe.
Thank you, Lisa.
Thank you so much for the opportunity.
Thank you. Be well.
Thank you so much.